Let's talk about layouts. There are three main types of layouts that retailers can choose from when setting up their store design. Now, very rarely will you find a retailer that sticks to one of these three and only one of these three. A lot of times retailers blend components from the three different types of layouts, but we're going to talk about them individually and the benefits that each of them provides for a retailer. So the first type of layout is a grid layout. Grid layouts have parallel aisles with merchandise on shelves on both sides of the aisles. Grid layouts have cash registers that are located at the entrance and exit to the retail location. Grid layouts work really well for customers who are interested in the utilitarian benefits offered by the retailer. These customers want to easily locate products and make their purchases very quickly. A grid layout is very cost efficient for the retailer. There's very little wasted space because the aisles can be filled with merchandise. Aisles are generally the same size and they're just large enough to get a customer and their cart through. So we know with ADA that this is generally large enough to fit a wheelchair through. Oftentimes, though, it's not large enough. If you've been to the grocery store recently, sometimes it's barely large enough to get two carts past each other. Shelves in a grid layout are generally high, and they allow for more product to be on the floor versus in the stock room. So retailers who use a grid layout, sometimes they won't have as much safety stock in the back because they can carry so much product on their shelves. The limitation to this type of grid layout is that the customers don't go up and down every aisle. So the best example for a grid layout would be a supermarket or a full-line discount store. When we have a supermarket and we think about the supermarket, there's generally only one entrance to that store, sometimes two if it's a bigger supermarket. The checkouts are all at the front. Normally when you walk into the store, you can walk the perimeter, right? The power perimeter, just like we talked about when we talked about types of retailers in Chapter 2. Or you can walk up and down every aisle. Now, the downside to this grid layout is that customers don't walk up and down every aisle, and therefore they miss a lot of the product, and therefore they might not be as likely to spend as much money as they would if they did walk up and down every aisle. Let's talk about the second type of layout, which is a racetrack layout. The racetrack layout is a layout that provides a major aisle that loops the entire store, and it's going to guide the customer traffic around different departments within that store. Right? So the racetrack layout provides a general loop of traffic that separates different departments. So we see racetrack layouts mostly in department stores. We also see racetrack layouts in supercenters, not the grocery section, but the other section of the store, right? So where all the apparel and consumer goods are. In a racetrack layout, you're going to have cash registers typically located within each department. There are multiple entrance and exits to a racetrack layout location. And a racetrack really facilitates the goal of getting the customer to see the merchandise in multiple departments. And it encourages unplanned purchases. So it encourages those impulse purchases. And the way it does that is that customers can see different viewing angles of the store. There aren't aisles. And so they walk kind of up and down and around and loop different departments. And also, in a racetrack layout, retailers use very low fixtures. And customers can see beyond just the merchandise they're looking at. So if you think about a Target or if you think about a Macy's, generally when you look up, if you stand straight and you look up around you, you can almost see 3 or 4, maybe even more departments depending on the size of that store because the fixtures are shorter than your eye level. And that's so you can see beyond what you're looking for, and hopefully it will encourage you to walk over to that department and make a purchase. When using a racetrack layout, from a merchandise perspective, what retailers try to do is that they will actually put new items near the major aisle. So we talked about that major aisle that loops around the store. Your newer merchandise is going to be closest to the aisle. And as merchandise has been in the store a little longer or gets marked down or goes on clearance, those are going to be pushed to the very middle of the department. Or if it's along a wall, to the very back towards the wall. And that's because retailers are again trying to drive those higher margin items. And so they want customers to purchase the newer items and then go look at some of the clearance items if they're still available. Oh, there's all my text. A racetrack layout does provide both hedonic benefits and utilitarian benefits for customers. If you want to walk in and get through the store, you can, but it does allow that hedonic benefit of searching the store and looking for what you need. So the third type of layout is called a freeform layout. A freeform layout can also be called a boutique layout, and that's because it's generally used in boutique locations. Boutique layout or freeform layout generally has one entrance and exit, and it arranges all of the fixtures in an asymmetric pattern. So there's really no rhyme or reason to the layout, and this one actually on our screen even is a little bit more symmetrical than what you'll generally find in a freeform layout location. Freeform layouts provide a very intimate, relaxing shopping experience. It's definitely set up for consumers to browse. When you go into a boutique layout, you are encouraged to look around the whole store. And the way retailers try to encourage that browsing is that there isn't a well-defined traffic pattern. So customers aren't naturally drawn around the store. When we think of that grid layout, or the racetrack layout, there is a path that customers are meant to take to get from one end of the store to the other. And whether that's up and down parallel aisles or in and around departments, there is a major aisle guiding traffic. In a freeform layout, there's not. And so customers kind of go where they want when they want. Because of this, in a freeform layout, personal selling becomes much more important in an effort to encourage the customers to explore merchandise. Because merchandise is set up in an asymmetrical pattern and there's no general direction or traffic pattern for the customers, it is up to the sales associate in the store to guide the customers to the merchandise to look at it. One of the downsides to a freeform layout, however, is that it greatly reduces the amount of merchandise that can be displayed at once. In a freeform layout, you see a lot of low fixtures. You see fixtures at about waist level where customers can look at. You don't see a lot of high shelving. You don't see products stacked floor to ceiling. And so what that means is you can't display as much as one time. And sometimes there isn't a ton of space in the back room of a freeform layout store. So therefore, it limits the assortment and variety that you're able to carry. And again, there's the text. Now, a freeform layout is absolutely set up to provide hedonic benefits and meet hedonic needs of customers. When we are talking about the freeform layout, it is really meant to provide an experience. It is not necessarily meant to have customers in and out picking up product. So those are the three general types of layouts. And I'd be interested to hear from you what type of layout you prefer to shop in and why. I'd also like to know, have a discussion on what types of retailers use each type of layout. Are there retailers that blend different types of layouts? And here's another question for you. If you're a restaurant, because that's a service retailer, what type of layout do you use? Okay, we're going to move into talking about the second overall category of design, and that is signage and graphics. When we talk about signage and graphics, these are information pieces in the store, and they are really to give customers information they might need. Signage can also be used to suggest special purchases to customers, or it could be used to just reinforce your overall store image. So signage really has three purposes. It's typically used to identify merchandise categories within the store. Signage is typically hung from the ceiling, but can be hung on walls or even put on displays. A lot of times icons are used more than words are. You don't see as much wordy signage in retail establishments anymore. You see directional icons in that store. So let's talk about 4 different types of signage that you might find in a retail establishment. The first is call to action signage. Call to action signage is placed in locations within the store that really encourage the shopper to engage with the retailer. So a call to action signage is asking the customer to do something. And so you might see a sign that says, scan this QR code to learn more about the product. Maybe you'll see a sign that says, like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. Those are call to action because the retailer is trying to get the customer to do something. Another type of call to action signage would be a sign that says pay here, or in this case, play here, right? Come and use the cell phone. We want you to actually try out the electronic equipment. You'll see signs that are trying to entice the customer, getting them to do something. So the second type is category signage. And category signage is used within a particular department to identify the types of products offered. A lot of times they're located near the actual goods. So in a supermarket, you will see category signage that looks a lot like this, hanging from the ceiling, telling customers where they can get the specific products. Old Navy has category signage that hangs on the wall and is above their jeans. And so you know exactly what the product is, where to get to that product. A map in a mall or a mall directory could also be called category signage. Promotional signage is a third type of signage that's meant to describe special offers that are happening within the store location. Sometimes these are not displayed necessarily inside the store, but they might be found in the store windows. Promotional signage is a signage that's talking about a special promotion. So these aren't necessarily year-round ongoing pricing information or ongoing sale information. These are promotional where they are generally temporary. So they will come and go. Now, point of sale signage is our last category of signage, and point of sale signage is placed near the merchandise and it lists the price of the product. So you'll see it on the table or hanging right next to the product. Now, point of sale signage is going to have the price of the product, and that might be a promotional price. So you might see a promotional price on point of sale signage, but remember, point of sale signage doesn't have to be promotional. And promotional signage should never be considered point of sale signage. So these are 2 different types of signage. Promotional signage is describing a special offer that's happening, and point of sale signage is listing the price. Promotional signage is generally in the windows, or it's hanging on a wall, or it's in a common area of a retail store. Point of sale signage is located right next to the merchandise. And that wraps up our 4 types of signage. So we have call to action, category signage, promotional signage, and point of sale signage. I'd be interested to see if you could find any creative types of signage that are used either inside a store or in store windows that falls within one of these categories.